For 3 billion years, life on Earth was a simple affair. A planet of slime, of microbial mats shimmering in shallow seas. The world was quiet, dominated by the unseen. Then, in a geological instant, everything changed. The rulebook of life was not just rewritten, it was thrown away. From the silent depths, an explosion of creation erupted, a biological Big Bang that would shape the destiny of every living thing to come. In just 20 million years, a mere blink in cosmic time, evolution went wild. It forged armor, claws, and compound eyes. It invented predators and prey. It sketched out the blueprints for nearly every animal body plan that exists today, including our own. This was not just a new chapter in Earth's history. This was the moment life became spectacular. This is the story of the Cambrian Explosion, when our planet truly came alive. Before the dawn of animals, before the first leaf or fin, Earth was an alien planet. For nearly 3 billion years, its story was not one of grand beasts or sprawling forests, but of the almost invisibly small. This was the Precambrian, an immense stretch of time where life's grandest achievement was a thin, slimy film covering rocks in shallow seas. Our journey begins here, in a world of slime. Imagine standing on the shore of an ancient ocean. There are no sounds of birds, no rustling leaves. The air is thin, with a different composition, and the sun shines with a younger, harsher light through a hazy, orange-tinted sky. The continents are unrecognizable, barren landmasses of raw rock, devoid of even a single patch of soil or moss. The real action, the totality of life, is in the water. But do not picture vibrant coral reefs. Instead, look to the strange dome-like structures rising from the seafloor, stromatolites. These are not single organisms, but living cities built by countless generations of cyanobacteria. Layer by layer, these microscopic architects trap sediment, cementing it with their sticky secretions, slowly building their stony monuments over thousands of years. They are the silent, patient masters of this early world. For over 1 billion years, a period scientists aptly call the boring billion, this was the status quo. Life was stable, but seemingly static. The dominant life forms were prokaryotes, simple single-celled organisms without a nucleus or complex internal structures. They formed vast, colorful microbial mats, a living carpet that was the beginning and end of the global ecosystem. Evolution was happening, but at a glacial pace. The planet seemed locked in a state of suspended animation, a prologue that felt as if it would never end. From our perspective, it's a world of profound stillness. Yet, beneath this tranquil, slimy surface, a revolution was brewing. The very metabolism of these humble cyanobacteria was producing a waste product, a substance so reactive and potent that it would fundamentally rewrite the rules of life. They were patiently, unknowingly, terraforming the entire planet. They were releasing a gas that would eventually poison the atmosphere for the old guard of life, and, in doing so, provide the high-energy fuel for a new, more dynamic world to come. The age of slime was laying the groundwork for the age of animals, but first, it would have to survive the global crisis it was about to create. After billions of years of microbial dominance, the script of life took a sudden, bizarre turn. Emerging from the deep freeze of a global ice age, the world's oceans began to teem with something new. Large, complex, multicellular life. This was the Ediacaran Period, beginning around 635 million years ago. For the first time, organisms were visible to the naked eye, leaving behind fossils that present one of the greatest puzzles in the history of evolution. Discovered in the Ediacara Hills of Australia, and since found worldwide, these fossils reveal a world of truly alien beings. They were unlike anything that came before, and, strangely, unlike most things that came after. Picture a seafloor populated by creatures from a dream. There were flat, segmented, mattress-like organisms called Dickinsonia, which crawled along the bottom, leaving impressions behind them. Frond-like Charnia were anchored to the seabed, resembling strange, motionless underwater ferns, yet they lived in waters too deep for photosynthesis, meaning they were not plants. Other creatures, like the shield-shaped Sprigina, showed the first hints of bilateral symmetry, a head and a tail, but their relationship to later animals remains fiercely debated. What makes the Ediacaran biota so enigmatic is their fundamental biology. They seem to lack the basic features we associate with animals. There are no clear signs of mouths, stomachs, intestines, or anuses. How did they eat? Some scientists propose they absorbed nutrients directly from the seawater through their massive surface areas. Others suggest they hosted symbiotic algae. They represent a completely different approach to being a large, multicellular organism, a failed experiment in body plans, an evolutionary path that ultimately led nowhere. For tens of millions of years, these gentle, mysterious giants dominated the planet's oceans. They were the first chapter in the book of complex life, a world without predators, a silent garden of strange forms. But their reign was destined to be short-lived. As the Ediacaran period drew to a close, these enigmatic fossils vanished from the rock record, almost as suddenly as they appeared. Their disappearance cleared the stage. Was their extinction a gradual fading, or a rapid event? Whatever the cause, their world ended. The slate was wiped clean, creating a biological vacuum, an unprecedented opportunity for a new cast of characters with new tools and new behaviors to make their explosive entrance. To understand the explosion of life, we must first understand the fuel that powered it. That fuel was oxygen, and its arrival was not a gentle gift, but a global catastrophe that transformed our planet. For the first half of Earth's history, the atmosphere was almost completely devoid of free oxygen. The earliest forms of life were anaerobic, meaning oxygen was not just unnecessary for them, it was a deadly poison. The world belonged to them. But around 2.4 billion years ago, a group of microbes, the cyanobacteria, developed a revolutionary new trick: photosynthesis. By harnessing sunlight, they could split water molecules to create energy, and in the process, they released a waste product, elemental oxygen. At first, this newly produced oxygen didn't build up in the atmosphere. The planet had a built-in buffer. Earth's early oceans were rich in dissolved iron. As cyanobacteria pumped out oxygen, it immediately combined with this iron, causing it to rust and sink to the seafloor. Over hundreds of millions of years, this process laid down vast deposits of iron ore, creating the beautiful and distinctive banded iron formations we see in ancient rocks today. These formations are a physical record of the planet holding its breath. For eons, the oceans absorbed the oxygen, protecting the anaerobic life from its toxic effects. But no sink is infinite. Eventually, the dissolved iron in the oceans was used up. The buffer was gone. Oxygen began to escape the seas and pour into the atmosphere for the first time. This was the Great Oxygenation Event. For the incumbent anaerobic life, it was an apocalypse. This highly reactive gas tore apart their cells, rendering entire ecosystems extinct. It was arguably the most significant pollution event in the history of the planet, a mass extinction driven by the metabolic activity of microscopic organisms. Yet this planetary poison was also the key to a new and more vigorous form of life. Oxygen allows for aerobic respiration, a method of generating energy that is nearly 20 times more efficient than anaerobic processes. It was the potent chemical battery that would one day power movement, thought, and predation. The crisis that wiped out the old world was simultaneously creating the essential conditions for the new one. The stage was being set, but the air itself had to be made breathable first. With the atmosphere now charged with oxygen, Earth's climate system entered a period of profound instability. The planet was about to plunge into the most severe ice ages it has ever known, a series of events so extreme they have been named Snowball Earth. Beginning around 720 million years ago, global temperatures plummeted. It wasn't just a case of polar ice caps expanding. Evidence suggests that glaciers marched from the poles all the way to the equator. The entire planet may have been encased in a shell of ice, perhaps a kilometer thick in places, transforming our blue marble into a glistening white snowball. For millions of years, the world was frozen. Life was pushed to the brink. The vast majority of the planet's surface would have been inhospitable. But life is resilient. It likely clung to existence in isolated pockets of relative warmth, perhaps in oases of meltwater on the ice surface, near volcanic hot springs on the seafloor, or in the deep ocean, shielded from the frozen surface. These isolated populations would have been subjected to intense evolutionary pressures, fostering genetic diversity and innovation in a fight for survival. The end of this deep freeze was as dramatic as its beginning. While the ice-covered surface reflected sunlight back into space, keeping the planet cool, volcanoes continued to erupt. Over millions of years, they pumped enormous quantities of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. With no liquid oceans to absorb it, the greenhouse gas built up to incredibly high concentrations. A tipping point was reached. The planet began to thaw, and once the melting started, it happened with astonishing speed. As dark ocean water was exposed, it absorbed more sunlight, which warmed the planet further, which melted more ice. This runaway feedback loop created a super hothouse world. The melting of the glaciers had a profound secondary effect. As they had scoured the continents for millennia, they had ground mountains into dust, pulverizing rock, and locking up vast quantities of minerals and nutrients. The ensuing global meltdown washed all of this material into the oceans in a massive chemical pulse. The world that emerged from the snowball was a radically different place. The oceans were now a warm, nutrient-rich soup, oxygenated and primed for life. The extreme environmental stress of the freeze, followed by the immense opportunity of the thaw, had created the perfect crucible for evolutionary innovation. The stage was set, the ingredients were in place, and the planet was ready for its next great act. The environment was primed. The oceans were rich with oxygen and nutrients, and the stage was clear of the old Ediacaran players. But to build an animal, you need more than just the right external conditions. You need an internal instruction manual, a biological blueprint. The key to the Cambrian explosion wasn't just found in the rocks and the water, it was written in the language of DNA. The secret lies in something scientists call the genetic toolkit. These are a set of powerful, ancient genes that control the development and layout of an organism's body. The most famous of these are the Hox genes. Think of them as master architects for the body plan. They determine where the head goes, where the tail goes, and how many segments are in between. They dictate the identity of each region of the body, instructing other genes to build a leg here, an antenna there, or a wing in another spot. Crucially, these toolkit genes did not suddenly appear at the dawn of the Cambrian. Genetic evidence shows that their origins lie much further back in time, in our simple, multicellular ancestors, long before animals had heads or legs to build. For hundreds of millions of years, these genes were present, but they were used to orchestrate much simpler body plans, perhaps just distinguishing one end of a sponge-like creature from the other. What changed in the Cambrian was not the invention of the tools, but the discovery of countless new ways to use them. The evolution of genetic regulatory networks, the complex system of switches that turn genes on and off, allowed for an unprecedented level of combinatorial creativity. It was like an artist who had only ever used a few colors suddenly gaining the ability to mix them into an infinite palette. A slight change in when or where a Hox gene was activated could lead to a radical change in the body plan. An extra pair of legs, a hardened shell, a jointed limb. This new genetic flexibility meant that evolution could experiment with form and function at a dizzying pace. It could rapidly generate novel body plans, test them against the environment, and discard the failures while amplifying the successes. The oxygenated, nutrient-rich seas were the perfect laboratory for this grand experiment. With the environmental pressures mounting and the genetic potential unlocked, the fuse was finally lit. The slow, quiet world of the Precambrian was over. The stage was set, the actors had their genetic scripts, and the curtain was about to rise on the most dramatic and creative burst of evolution the world has ever known. For hundreds of millions of years, life was soft. The oceans were dominated by the enigmatic Ediacaran biota, creatures of quilt-like construction with no skeletons, shells, or teeth. They were gentle giants and delicate fronds in a world without predators. But as the Ediacaran period waned and the Cambrian approached, a profound change began to ripple through the fabric of life. The evidence was not in some grand, complete fossil, but in something far smaller and more mysterious. Scattered in ancient rock layers across the globe, from the frozen plains of Siberia to the deserts of Namibia, geologists found a new kind of fossil: tiny, mineralized fragments, often no larger than a grain of sand. They were known as the small shelly fossils. This was not a single species, but a treasure trove of biological hardware. There were microscopic tubes, delicate net-like scales, and sharp, pointed spines. These were the first pieces of armor, the first skeletal components ever evolved. For the first time, organisms were mastering biomineralization, the process of taking minerals from the seawater, like calcium carbonate and calcium phosphate, and building them into their own bodies. This innovation was a revolutionary leap. It offered a dual advantage in a rapidly changing world. A hard exterior provided a robust scaffold for more complex bodies, allowing for new muscle attachments and more efficient movement. But more importantly, it offered protection. The appearance of armor suggests the simultaneous appearance of that which it protects against: predation. The peaceful Ediacaran garden was ending. A new dynamic was taking hold, an evolutionary arms race where developing a defense was as critical as finding food. These tiny, shelly fragments were the first shots fired in that race. They were tantalizing clues, whispers of the animals that created them. Paleontologists could not see the whole creature, only its component parts. It was like finding a single rivet and trying to imagine an entire battleship. Who were these creatures? What did they look like? The small shelly fauna proved that the building blocks for complex skeletons were in place, setting the stage for larger, more formidable animals to emerge from the evolutionary shadows. The age of soft bodies was over. The age of armor had begun. High in the Canadian Rockies of British Columbia lies a fossil bed that would forever change our understanding of life's history. In the summer of 1909, paleontologist Charles Doolittle Walcott stumbled upon a slab of dark rock filled with the ghostly impressions of soft-bodied animals. He had found the Burgess Shale. It was a discovery of monumental importance, a Lagerstätte, a site of extraordinary fossil preservation. Here, an ancient community of organisms had been caught in an underwater mudslide, swept into deep, oxygen-deprived water, and buried instantly. This rapid burial protected them from decay, preserving not just shells and bones, but the delicate details of their soft tissues, gills, guts, and antennae. It was a perfect snapshot of a complete marine ecosystem from 508 million years ago. What the Burgess Shale revealed was staggering. The creatures entombed within were unlike anything seen before or since. There was the five-eyed Opabinia, which used a long frontal nozzle tipped with a grasping claw to catch its food. There was Hallucigenia, a creature so bizarre it was first reconstructed upside down and backwards, walking on its defensive spines. and there was Wiwaxia, a slug-like animal covered in a coat of mail-like scales and intimidating spikes. These were not simple, primitive ancestors of modern life. They represented a wild explosion of evolutionary experimentation. Many of these creatures, like Opabinia, belong to body plans that are now completely extinct. They were branches on the tree of life that were pruned away long ago. The Burgess Shale demonstrated that the Cambrian Explosion was not a neat, orderly march towards modern animals. Instead, it was a chaotic and creative frenzy, where evolution tried out countless designs. For every successful body plan that would lead to today's phyla, there were perhaps dozens of others that were magnificent, strange, and ultimately fleeting. For decades, the Burgess Shale was viewed as a unique marvel, a solitary window into this lost world. It raised a profound question. Was this incredible diversity a localized phenomenon, a single evolutionary hotbed, or was it a clue to a much larger global event? The answer would lie hidden for 70 more years, waiting to be unearthed on the other side of the planet. The story of the Cambrian Explosion takes a dramatic leap forward to 1984 in Yunnan Province, China. Here, paleontologist Hu Xiangguang was surveying rocks when he discovered a fossil that would rival the importance of the Burgess Shale. He had found the Chengjiang fossil beds, another Lagerstätte of breathtaking quality. But this was not merely a second example of exceptional preservation. The Chengjiang biota was dated to 518 million years ago, a full 10 million years older than the Burgess Shale. It opened an even earlier window into the dawn of animal life. The treasures of Chengjiang were revolutionary. They proved that the Cambrian Explosion was not a localized Canadian event, but a truly global phenomenon that had started even earlier than previously imagined. The diversity of life was already astounding, and the level of detail was unmatched. The fine-grained mudstone of Chengjiang preserved features rarely seen in the fossil record. Paleontologists could see the delicate, feathery gills of arthropods, the digestive tracts of worms, and in some cases, even the impressions of nervous systems. This was paleontology at a near microscopic level, offering unprecedented insights into the biology of these ancient animals. Perhaps the most significant discovery to emerge from this site was a small, fish-like creature named Milocunmingia. It was unassuming, just over an inch long, but its anatomy was world-changing. It possessed a distinct head, gill pouches, and a notochord, the precursor to a backbone. It was one of the world's earliest known vertebrates. Our own distant ancestry was present in these ancient seas. The Chengjiang fossils confirmed that almost all major animal body plans, or phyla, had appeared in a geological blink of an eye. The blueprints for arthropods, chordates, and mollusks were already established. The find solidified the concept of the Cambrian Explosion as the single most important evolutionary event in Earth's history, a period of unparalleled creativity that established the framework for all animal life that followed. And amidst this incredible diversity, one particular group of armored animals was already showing signs of becoming the undisputed rulers of the Cambrian seafloor. If one animal could be called the icon of the Paleozoic era, it is the trilobite. They were not the largest or the fiercest creatures of the Cambrian, but they were an evolutionary masterpiece of design and adaptation. For nearly 300 million years, they dominated the world's oceans. Their name comes from their distinctive body, which is divided longitudinally into 3 lobes. This body was protected by a sophisticated exoskeleton made of calcite, a crystalline form of calcium carbonate. This armor was both strong and flexible, with articulated segments along the thorax that allowed many species to roll up into a defensive ball, just like a modern pill bug. But perhaps their most remarkable feature was their eyes. Trilobites were among the very first animals to develop complex, compound eyes. Unlike a simple eye that just detects light, These were advanced visual organs made of dozens, sometimes thousands, of individual lenses. Each lens was a single, perfectly formed calcite crystal, a feat of bioengineering that gave them a nearly 360-degree view of their surroundings. They could see predators approaching and spot potential food with a clarity that was new to the world. Their success was staggering. Over 20,000 species of trilobite have been identified, making them one of the most diverse groups of extinct animals ever known. They ranged in size from less than a millimeter to over 2 feet in length. They conquered every available marine niche, from the deep sea to shallow reefs. Some were active predators, hunting worms and other small invertebrates. Others were scavengers, cleaning the ocean floor. Still others were filter feeders, sifting nutrients from the water. Their fossils are found on every continent on Earth, a testament to their global reign. Their habit of molting their exoskeletons as they grew means that a single trilobite could leave behind multiple fossils in its lifetime, contributing to their rich and detailed record in stone. They were the great success story of the Cambrian, a durable and versatile design that would persist for eons. But as they scuttled and foraged on the seabed, they were often watched from above by a far larger and more formidable presence, a creature that represented the dawn of a new and terrifying ecological role. For a long time, Anomalocaris was a puzzle assembled in pieces. Paleontologists kept finding its disparate parts and misidentifying them. A circular, plated fossil with a hole in the middle was thought to be a jellyfish called Peytoia. 2 spiny, curved appendages were classified as the bodies of a strange shrimp. It wasn't until the 1980s that researchers, working on a complete specimen from the Burgess Shale, had a stunning realization. These were not 3 different animals. They were all parts of one giant creature, a formidable hunter unlike any other. Its name, Anomalocaris, means abnormal shrimp, and it was aptly named. Reaching up to a meter in length, it was a giant in the Cambrian seas. It moved with a graceful, undulating motion, propelled by a series of flexible lobes along the sides of its large, segmented body. At the front of its head were 2 large, stalked compound eyes, granting it superb stereoscopic vision to track its prey. And below them were its most imposing features, 2 powerful spiny appendages used for grasping and a circular mouth composed of tough, sharp plates. This was not a scavenger or a filter feeder. This was a creature built to hunt. Anomalocaris was the world's first apex predator. Its emergence marked a fundamental shift in the evolutionary game. Before, the primary pressures on life were environmental. Now, the greatest danger was other life. The existence of a large, active predator like Anomalocaris exerted immense evolutionary pressure on every other animal in its ecosystem. It fueled the arms race that had begun with the small shellies. The development of hard shells, sharp spines, and the instinct to burrow were all direct responses to the threat posed by this superhunter. It was a key engine of Cambrian diversification, a force of natural selection with teeth and claws. The rise of Anomalocaris signifies the establishment of the modern ecological pyramid, with a dominant predator at the top. The era of passive, soft-bodied life was definitively over. The Cambrian seas were now a complex arena of pursuit and defense, a dynamic and dangerous world where the intricate dance between predator and prey had begun in earnest, setting the stage for all of animal evolution to come. In the annals of paleontology, few discoveries have challenged our understanding of life's possibilities quite like the fossils of the Burgess Shale. Unearthed from the Canadian Rockies, these exquisitely preserved relics from over 500 million years ago revealed a world teeming with creatures so strange they seemed to belong to science fiction. Among these weird wonders, one animal stands out for its sheer, baffling anatomy: Opabinia regalis. When scientists first pieced together its fossilized remains, The result was an organism that defied every known category of life. It possessed a soft, segmented body, about the size of a thumb, with flexible lobes along its sides that it likely used for swimming. This was peculiar, but not unthinkable. The true shock came from its head. Protruding from the front was a long, hose-like proboscis, almost a third of its body length, ending in a fearsome-looking claw. This appendage was likely used to grasp prey from the muddy seafloor and bring it to a mouth located bizarrely underneath its head. But the most astonishing feature was its set of eyes. Opabinia did not have 2 eyes, or 4, but 5. These eyes were perched on short stalks, providing what must have been a panoramic 360-degree view of its surroundings. The initial scientific reconstruction was so outlandish that when it was presented at a paleontology conference in 1972, the audience first chuckled, assuming it was a joke. The laughter soon subsided into a stunned silence as they realized the evidence was real. This creature had truly existed. Opabinia was a testament to the Cambrian Explosion's unbridled creativity. It represented an experimental body plan, a unique solution to the challenges of life in the primordial oceans. It was an active predator, using its superior vision and specialized grasping tool to hunt soft-bodied worms and other small invertebrates. For a time, it was a successful design, a marvel of evolutionary engineering. Its lineage, however, appears to have been a dead end. No modern animal shares its unique combination of features. Opabinia serves as a powerful reminder that the history of life is not a simple, linear march toward familiar forms. It is a vast, branching tree, filled with countless experiments that flourished for a time before vanishing, leaving behind only faint, fossilized whispers of a world far stranger than we could ever have imagined. And Opabinia was not the only puzzle to emerge from the Cambrian rock. Another creature was so perplexing it was named for a dreamlike state of confusion. If Opabinia tested the limits of scientific imagination, another of its Cambrian contemporaries shattered them entirely. Its name is Hallucigenia, a fitting title for a creature that for decades remained one of paleontology's greatest riddles. When first described in the 1970s from the Burgess Shale fossils, its reconstruction was a biological absurdity. The initial interpretation depicted a worm-like animal walking on 7 pairs of rigid, stilt-like spines. On its back, a row of tentacles waved in the water, each believed to have a mouth at its tip for feeding. It was a creature that made no mechanical or evolutionary sense. How could it walk on inflexible spikes? How could it feed with tentacles on its back? For years, scientists were stumped, with some even questioning if the fossil was a real animal or just a bizarre part of a larger, unknown creature. The puzzle of Hallucigenia is a classic story of the scientific process in action. The mystery began to unravel with new fossil discoveries thousands of miles away in the Chengjiang deposits of China. These fossils were more complete and showed the animal in a different orientation. At the same time, researchers re-examined the original Burgess Shale specimens with more powerful microscopes. The revelations were stunning. The entire creature had been reconstructed upside down and back to front. The 7 pairs of stilts were not legs at all. They were sharp defensive spines that lined the animal's back, protecting it from predators. The tentacles on its back were actually its legs, 10 pairs of soft claw-tipped limbs called lobopods, which it used to walk along the seafloor. Even its head was finally identified. What was once thought to be a tail was found to contain simple eyes and a mouth. The bizarre dream creature finally resolved into a real, functional animal, a small, slow-moving scavenger or herbivore, protected by a formidable array of spikes. But the story didn't end there. By correctly identifying Hallucigenia's true form, scientists were able to place it within the tree of life. It was an early ancestor of today's Onychophora, or velvet worms, a group of terrestrial invertebrates found in tropical forests. The alien from the Cambrian Sea was, in fact, family. Solving this spiny riddle did more than just correct a scientific error. It provided a direct link between the strange world of the Cambrian and the life we see today. It showed how even the most perplexing experiments of evolution could contain the seeds of modern body plans, and it highlighted the critical importance of a new sense that was driving so much of this evolution: the ability to see. For billions of years, life on Earth existed in a sensory fog. The world was experienced primarily through touch and chemical signals. Animals could sense pressure changes in the water or taste the presence of food nearby, but they could not see their environment. The oceans were a murky, reactive world of bumping and feeling. Then, something extraordinary happened. Life learned to see. This single innovation may have been the primary catalyst for the entire Cambrian Explosion, a concept known as the light switch theory. The evolution of the first complex, image-forming eye was a revolutionary event that forever changed the rules of survival. The pioneers of this new sensory world were likely the arthropods, particularly the trilobites. Their compound eyes were marvels of biological engineering. Unlike our single-lens eyes, a compound eye is made of dozens or even hundreds of individual optical units, each with its own lens and light-sensitive cells. The trilobites' lenses were especially sophisticated, constructed from crystals of calcite, a mineral they could manipulate with incredible precision to create a perfectly focused image. For the first time in the history of our planet, an animal could perceive its world with clarity and detail. It could distinguish shapes, judge distances, and track movement. This new ability conferred an enormous advantage. A predator with eyes could now become a true hunter, actively stalking its prey from a distance instead of simply stumbling upon it. It could identify potential targets, assess their size, and plan its attack. The world transformed from a two-dimensional map of chemical gradients into a three-dimensional arena of action. The impact was immediate and dramatic. Prey animals were suddenly exposed, visible to these new, sharp-eyed predators. The evolutionary pressure was immense and urgent: adapt or be consumed. This triggered a cascade of defensive innovations. Animals developed camouflage to blend in, disruptive patterns to confuse predators, and, most significantly, hard protective shells and armor. The invention of vision created a dynamic of pursuit and evasion that had never existed before. It was the starting pistol for a biological arms race that would fuel an unprecedented burst of evolutionary creativity, shaping animal bodies and behaviors in ways that are still with us today. The dark, quiet world of the Precambrian was over. The lights were on, and the great drama of predator and prey had truly begun. The dawn of vision turned the Cambrian seas into a landscape of peril. With predators now able to see their targets, the old ways of survival were no longer enough. A new evolutionary imperative emerged: defense. This sparked one of the most dramatic arms races in the history of life, a rapid coevolution of offensive weapons and defensive armor. The fossil record from this period reads like the remains of a 500-million-year-old battlefield. On one side were the predators. The apex hunter of this era was Anomalocaris, the abnormal shrimp. Reaching up to a meter in length, it was a giant for its time. It possessed large, complex eyes, giving it superb vision, and two formidable grasping appendages at the front of its head, lined with sharp spikes to seize its prey. Its mouth was a circular array of hard plates that could constrict to crush the shells of its victims. On the other side were the prey, who responded to this threat by turning their own bodies into fortresses. The trilobites became masters of defense. Their bodies were covered in a hard, mineralized exoskeleton, a shield of calcite that made them difficult to attack. Many species evolved the ability to enroll, tucking their soft undersides away and presenting a predator with an armored ball, much like a modern pill bug. But trilobites were not alone. A menagerie of other armored creatures appeared. Wiwaxia was a slug-like animal covered in small protective plates called sclerites and bristling with long, sharp spines that projected from its back. Hallucigenia, once its anatomy was understood, was clearly a creature whose spines served as a powerful deterrent. An entire ecosystem of small shelly fauna emerged, tiny animals that produced intricate shells and plates of calcium carbonate and phosphate. This evolutionary escalation is not just theory, it is etched in stone. Paleontologists have found trilobite fossils with distinct crescent-shaped bite marks, some of which show signs of healing. This is direct evidence of failed predation attempts, a record of an animal that was attacked, survived, and lived to tell the tale in its own skeleton. Fossilized droppings, known as coprolites, attributed to large predators, are found packed with the crushed fragments of trilobite shells. The message was clear. The Cambrian was a world of intense interaction. Every improvement in a predator's ability to hunt was met with an improvement in a prey's ability to defend. This relentless cycle of innovation, this planetary arms race, was a powerful engine of diversification, driving the creation of new body plans and complex behaviors at a breathtaking pace. Yet, not all life was caught in this direct conflict. Some organisms were quietly undertaking a different kind of revolution, one that would change the very face of the ocean floor. While the dramatic arms race between predator and prey played out in the open waters, a quieter but equally profound revolution was taking place on the seabed. This was the dawn of ecosystem engineering, the moment when life began to build structures on a scale that could alter the entire marine environment. The architects of this new world were the archaeocyathans. Their name means ancient cups, a fitting description for these enigmatic creatures. For millions of years, they were the planet's first reef builders. Though their exact biological classification remains a subject of debate, they are often compared to sponges. They built porous, conical, or vase-shaped skeletons out of calcium carbonate, the same mineral used in seashells and limestone. Individually, an archaeocyathon was a simple filter feeder, drawing in water through the pores in its outer wall and expelling it from a central cavity. But collectively, they were monumental. Over generations, vast colonies of archaeocyathans grew upon the remains of their ancestors, creating the first large-scale reefs in Earth's history. Before their arrival, the floor of the shallow Cambrian seas was a largely flat, monotonous expanse of mud. The archaeocyathon reefs changed everything. They introduced a complex, three-dimensional topography to this world. These structures became bustling underwater cities, creating a multitude of new niches for other organisms to exploit. The reefs provided shelter from predators, baffles that calmed the surrounding water, and elevated positions that gave filter feeders better access to ocean currents and the nutrients they carried. A whole new community of life flourished in and around these ancient structures. Trilobites and other arthropods crawled across their surfaces, grazing on microbial films. Early brachiopods, shelled animals resembling clams, attached themselves to the reef framework. Small predators patrolled the nooks and crannies, hunting for inhabitants. The archaeocyathon reefs were the first biodiversity hotspots, concentrating life and fostering complex ecological relationships. For about 15 million years, they dominated the world's shallow tropical seas. But like so many of the Cambrian's evolutionary experiments, their reign was fleeting. By the end of the early Cambrian, they had vanished completely, likely victims of changing sea levels or ocean chemistry. Their extinction was a stark reminder of the fragility of this new, complex web of life. The Cambrian Explosion was a period of incredible creation, but also of sudden disappearance. It showed that evolution was not a steady progression, but a dynamic and often unpredictable dance of innovation and extinction. In the vast collection of fossils recovered from the Burgess Shale, amidst the formidable forms of apex predators and armored trilobites, lay a creature so simple it was almost overlooked. Discovered by Charles Doolittle Walcott in the early 20th century, this small, flattened, worm-like organism was initially classified as a type of marine worm. It possessed no claws, no spines, no shell. It was unremarkable. For decades, it remained a minor curiosity in the Cambrian menagerie. This unassuming animal was named Pikaia. Its moment of rediscovery came much later, when paleontologists re-examined Walcott's collection with fresh eyes. They noticed something extraordinary, a feature previously dismissed but of monumental importance: a stiff, flexible rod running along its back. This was a notochord, the primitive precursor to a backbone. This single anatomical feature reclassified Pikaia overnight. It was not a worm. It was a chordate. This discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The phylum Chordata includes every animal with a backbone on the planet: fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. It includes us. Suddenly, this humble, 2-inch-long creature from the ancient seas was a candidate for the earliest known ancestor of all vertebrates. The implications were staggering. While giants like Anomalocaris dominated the ecosystem, this small, defenseless swimmer carried the genetic blueprint for the future rulers of the planet. Pikaia likely swam with a simple side-to-side motion, filtering tiny particles of food from the water. It had no eyes, no jaws, and no limbs. Yet, it possessed the foundational structure upon which all subsequent vertebrate evolution would be built. The debate continues today. Was Pikaia our direct ancestor, a great-great-great-grandparent many millions of times removed? Or was it a close cousin, an early offshoot on the chordate family tree that ultimately went extinct? Fossils of other early chordates, like Metaspregina, which showed evidence of gills and more complex anatomy, have complicated the picture. But whether a direct forebear or a close relative, Pikaia's significance is undeniable. It proves that our own lineage was present in those primordial waters, a tiny player in a grand evolutionary drama. It is a profound reminder that history's most influential figures are not always the largest or the most powerful. Sometimes they are the quiet survivors who carry the seeds of the future within them, navigating a dangerous world with little more than a simple plan and the potential for greatness. The term Cambrian Explosion conjures a powerful image, a biological Big Bang, where complex life appeared on Earth in a geological instant. For over a century, the fossil record seemed to support this dramatic narrative. Rocks from before the Cambrian period were largely barren, while Cambrian layers were suddenly teeming with a bewildering variety of sophisticated animals. It looked like a sudden, miraculous creation event. But is this picture accurate? Was it truly an overnight revolution, or is the story more nuanced? Modern science suggests the Cambrian explosion may have had a very long fuse. The genetic toolkit required to build complex animal bodies did not appear out of nowhere. Studies of molecular clocks, which use the mutation rates in DNA to estimate when different species diverged, suggest that the common ancestors of many Cambrian animals existed millions of years earlier, during a period known as the Ediacaran. The fossils from this time are strange, enigmatic, frond-like organisms that bear little resemblance to Cambrian fauna. They lacked shells, skeletons, and other hard parts, making their preservation incredibly rare. So, the explosion we see in the fossil record might not be an explosion of new life, but an explosion of preservable life. The innovation of biomineralization, the ability to create hard shells and exoskeletons from minerals in the seawater, was a game-changer. Suddenly, animals had armor, and just as importantly, they had bodies that could easily become fossils. This creates a powerful bias in the rock record, making a gradual diversification look like a sudden event. Several environmental triggers likely fanned the evolutionary flames. The end of a massive global ice age, known as Snowball Earth, left a world of new, shallow seas rich in minerals. Critically, oxygen levels in the atmosphere and oceans were on the rise. More oxygen could fuel higher metabolisms, allowing for larger bodies and more active lifestyles, such as predation. It was a perfect storm. The genetic potential for complexity, which had been developing for millions of years, was finally unleashed by a newly hospitable planet. The explosion was less a sudden appearance and more a rapid radiation into newly available ecological niches. It was the moment when life, armed with a new set of tools and presented with a world of opportunity, went from a quiet simmer to a rolling boil. The Cambrian world was a vibrant, chaotic, and utterly new experiment. For millions of years, life proliferated in the warm, shallow seas, creating ecosystems of unprecedented complexity. Trilobites scuttled across the sea floor in their thousands, strange arthropods swam in the water column, and the first primitive reefs, built by organisms called archaeocyathids, provided shelter for countless smaller creatures. It was a golden age of innovation. But the very conditions that allowed this world to flourish were not permanent. The planet's climate is a dynamic system, and the Cambrian period, for all its creative energy, was not immune to change. Its spectacular rise would be followed by a devastating fall. The end of the period was not a gentle transition, but a series of severe biotic crises, culminating in the Cambrian to Ordovician extinction event. This was one of the most significant mass extinctions in Earth's history, profoundly reshaping the tree of life. The primary culprit is believed to have been a major episode of global cooling. This led to the formation of massive glaciers, locking up vast quantities of the planet's water. As the ice sheets grew, sea levels plummeted worldwide. This was catastrophic for the Cambrian fauna. The sprawling, shallow continental shelves, which were the cradle of this evolutionary explosion, were exposed and destroyed. The habitats that supported the greatest diversity of life simply vanished. The cooling of the oceans would have been an additional shock to species adapted to a warmer world. Changes in ocean chemistry, possibly leading to widespread anoxia or a lack of oxygen, would have created immense stress on marine organisms. The toll was immense. The archaeocyathid reefs disappeared completely, never to return. Many of the most iconic Cambrian trilobite families were lost forever. Entire classes of animals that had thrived for millions of years were erased from the planet. The world that emerged on the other side of this crisis was a different place. The extinction acted as a great filter, clearing the evolutionary stage. It removed many of the dominant players, creating a power vacuum in the world's oceans. This devastation, however, was also an opportunity. For the survivors, a new world of possibilities opened up. The stage was set for the next great chapter in the story of life, the Ordovician period, which would see the rise of new groups and a dramatic restructuring of marine ecosystems. We tend to view evolution as a linear march of progress, a steady climb up a ladder that culminates in the familiar forms of life we see today. The Cambrian fossil record, however, tells a very different story. It reveals a world of radical experimentation, a time when nature tried out countless body plans, many of which seem utterly alien to modern eyes. These were not primitive stepping stones on the path to us. They were unique solutions to the challenges of life, alternative blueprints for what an animal could be. For every evolutionary line that succeeded, dozens more vanished, leaving behind only their fossilized remains as evidence of their brief time on Earth. These are life's failed experiments. Consider Opabinia from the Burgess Shale. This creature defies easy classification. It had 5 stalked eyes, a backward-facing mouth beneath its head, and a long, flexible frontal proboscis ending in a grasping claw. When its anatomy was first presented at a scientific meeting, the audience reportedly burst into laughter, believing it to be a joke. Then there is hallucigenia, a creature so bizarre that paleontologists initially reconstructed it upside down and backwards, walking on what were actually protective dorsal spines. Its true orientation, with delicate, clawed legs and strange tentacles on its back, is hardly less strange. These weird wonders, as they have been called, represent entire branches of the animal family tree that were pruned away by extinction. They were not inferior. They were perfectly adapted to their Cambrian environment. Wiwaxia, a slug-like creature covered in protective plates and long spines, was a successful animal for millions of years. But its body plan, for reasons we may never fully understand, proved to be an evolutionary dead end. The Cambrian was a time of incredible anatomical disparity. There were likely more fundamental body plans, or phyla, in existence then than there are today. The world we inhabit is just one possible outcome of this initial explosion of diversity. The survival of the phyla that exist now was not preordained. It was a matter of contingency, of luck, and of being in the right place at the right time when environmental conditions changed. Looking at these fossils, we are forced to confront a profound idea. If we could rewind the tape of life and play it again, the result might be completely different. Perhaps in another timeline, the descendants of Opabinia, not the chordates, would be the planet's intelligent species. These lost designs are a humbling reminder that our existence is not an inevitability, but the result of a long and unpredictable history of trial and error. From the bustling coral reefs of today to the complex ecosystems on land, the world we know is built upon foundations laid more than 500 million years ago. The Cambrian Explosion was not merely a distant, curious chapter in Earth's history. It was the single most important evolutionary event for animal life. Its legacy is written into the DNA of nearly every creature on the planet, including our own. The most profound legacy is the establishment of the animal body plans. All the major phyla, the fundamental blueprints for how to build an animal, appeared during this period. The segmented body of an insect, the radial symmetry of a jellyfish, the shelled body of a snail, and the internal nerve cord of a vertebrate all have their origins in the Cambrian. For the last 500 million years, evolution has largely been tinkering with these established designs, modifying and adapting them, but not inventing entirely new ones. The Cambrian was the crucible of anatomical innovation. The period also gave birth to a dynamic that continues to drive evolution today: the predator-prey arms race. The appearance of the first large mobile predators, like Anomalocaris, with its superior vision and grasping appendages, changed the rules of the game forever. In response, prey animals evolved an incredible array of defenses: hard shells, sharp spines, camouflage, and the ability to burrow. This intense pressure to eat and avoid being eaten accelerated evolutionary change and led to the development of complex sensory systems, nervous systems, and behaviors. This fundamental conflict remains the primary engine of natural selection in most ecosystems. Furthermore, Cambrian organisms were the planet's first ecosystem engineers. They began to burrow into the seafloor, a behavior known as bioturbation. This completely altered the chemistry of the ocean sediments, creating new habitats for other organisms. The first reef systems, though primitive, created complex three-dimensional structures that increased biodiversity. These ancient animals began to shape their environment in ways that would have lasting effects on the entire planet. Every time we see a fish swim, a spider build a web, or a bird take flight, we are witnessing the distant echoes of the Cambrian. Our own bodies, with their bilateral symmetry, a head with concentrated sensory organs, and a spinal cord, are a direct inheritance from a tiny, swimming ancestor that navigated those ancient waters. The Cambrian Explosion set the stage, drew the blueprints, and established the rules for the grand, sprawling, and beautiful story of animal life on Earth.